So we are now quarantined for the next 2 weeks. I assume you are if you're watching this. And now the big question is, what am I going to watch for 2 weeks? Because now we're looking at streaming services as our Lord and Savior. And I have compiled a list of movies, TV shows, documentaries that I think you might want to check out from HBO. I'll put out Hulu, Amazon, the other ones, I'll put them out in the coming days. But this one is strictly for HBO. Now, before I get into it, I do thank everybody who has subscribed to the channel and is checking out this video. If you haven't subscribed, please think about doing so because I need 1,000 subscribers to get paid. This is not me just being like, oh, I want to be popular. No, I want to make money from this, and YouTube's lame, and they make you do 1,000 subscribers before you actually cash in. So I don't have 1,000 subscribers. It'd be cool if you could, hit the thumbs up at the end, and then the subscribe button is the most important. Or the thumbs down if you just think this video sucks. I'm not going to judge you for it. But let's get into the movies first from HBO, and I do apologize for the glare from my glasses. I couldn't afford the non-glare glasses because I don't get paid from doing YouTube videos, so you're just going to have to deal with it. The first one is the movie 61. This was a made-for-HBO movie that is so good. It's based on a true story, and if you're a baseball fan, you're going to want to check this movie out if you haven't done so already. It follows Roger Maris, and it follows Mickey Mantle's race to break Babe Ruth's home run record in the 1961 season and all the things they had to go through. It is so good. If you've never seen it, or if you're not a huge baseball fan but you're a sports fan, it's really a really good movie to check out. And if you have seen it, I think it's worth rewatching. The next movie I'll talk about is Alita Battle Angel. Don't let the name of this movie fool you. It was surprisingly pretty good. I did a 60-second review for this that you can find, in my YouTube channel. Just search 60-second review of Alita Battle Angel or scroll down. You'll find it. I think I did. Did I do it? No. I don't think I did. No, I didn't do it. It was before I started doing these. So I didn't even do one. So, this movie is set in the future where this girl ends up being made out of a robot, basically, and she ends up, kicking ass and being from the past, and I'm not doing a good job selling this. I understand it, but the graphics were good. Storyline was okay. There was an annoying guy in it. But if you're desperate, I think it is a pretty decent movie to check out. They do set up for a sequel that I don't think we're going to get. It's from a Japanese manga comic that, I think I said that right. I'm pushing this whole thing with Alita. It's worth watching. The next movie is All the Way. And this movie is about the relationship between Martin Luther King and Lyndon B. Johnson. And it's surprisingly very good. It was an HBO movie that came and went, and that's one of the reasons I say it was surprisingly pretty good. But didn't get a lot of buzz, and it was an interesting story. And I think if you're a fan of true stories, this one is worth checking out. The next one is a comedy from the mid-2000s called Along Came Polly, starring Ben Stiller and Jennifer Aniston. And Ben Stiller plays an insurance adjuster that knows all these little details about the world. What are the odds that you can die from a hang gliding accident? The odds that somebody washes their hands? Why you shouldn't do this? And then he meets Polly, who's Jennifer Aniston, hot as hell in this movie, and she doesn't abide by that at all. And this movie is very funny. Philip Seymour Hoffman's in it, and I think he steals the show in it, but it's a decent comedy worth checking out if you haven't done so. The next one is my favorite movie of, I want to say, 2018, called American Animals. Same thing. Based on a true story. If you like true stories, you'll dig this. This is made by a director named Bart Layton. And what he does so well in these movies is he mixes the real world with actors. So he has the real people who did the story, and then he has actors also playing them, and he mixes the two in. And I love this movie so much. I saw 100 movies that year, I think over that. This was my number one movie I saw that year. Out of all these movies, I think this is the movie you should see because I don't think it gets the credit, and it is tremendous. American Animals is an absolute must. The next movie I'll talk about is an oldie but a goodie, Armageddon. What's not to like? You've got an asteroid barreling down on Earth, and then you've got a bad Aerosmith song with Liv Tyler in the movie. If you're looking for something just to kind of click and not even think about, Armageddon's it. Okay. The next one is the movie Big. Same thing. This is an oldie but a goodie, and if you haven't seen Big, you're probably living under a rock. But Tom Hanks goes from I think a 12-year-old to an adult because of a game on Coney Island's, Coney Island. He wishes he's an adult, and boom, he's big. It's a classic. Next movie is one from my childhood. It is called The Big Green. Is it a good movie? Not really. But nostalgia factor, I couldn't not put it on here. This is a movie that is set in Elmer, Texas, I think it is, or Elmira, Texas. And they get a foreign exchange teacher in. Didn't even know that was a thing. She comes in. She wants to start a soccer program with the kids. They're really bad. It's a typical kids sports movie. They're awful. They get this guy to come in, this player who changes everything. They start practicing. They get good. I'm 30, so if you're 30, you probably grew up with The Big Green. And if you're, once again, you're looking for a nostalgia factor, this is it. Another one is a movie called Blind Spotting. And this is another movie that kind of came and went. And I really, the more I thought about this movie, I liked it. Basically, the premise is a black guy in Oakland, California witnesses a police shooting of another African American and how it affects him. And not just about how it affects him, but also how it affects the police officer as well. And I found it interesting that they told that side, because normally you don't think about that side. And it's a heavy movie, but it's very well done, very good. I thoroughly suggest it. I thought the acting in it was really, really good. So Blind Spotting, if you're looking for like a little nugget, kind of like American Animals, a movie that flew under the radar, Blind Spotting is it. The next one is a movie that did not fly under the radar at all, Bohemian Rhapsody. Now, full disclosure, I think the movie is worth watching, and that's why I put it on the list. Do I think it's an incredible movie that should have been nominated for Oscars? No, I think it's a Queen puff piece. If you like Queen, you're going to like this movie. Music's good, we know that, but it's worth watching for sure. The next movie is Brexit, and this was another made-for-HBO movie. Brexit follows the Brexit, basically, the true story of Brexit. But also, if you're an American, I think it shows maybe how Donald Trump possibly won the election of these people going after people that didn't necessarily ever vote. They were targeting them to vote. And it was a very interesting look at how politics can such easily be manipulated. And I thought it was really good. The next movie is absolute classic, Bridesmaids. Bridesmaids, I'll just move on. That movie is hysterical. Loved it. Next movie, Brothers. This is a movie that I think had just gotten forgotten about, but it's a very powerful movie starring Tobey Maguire and Jake Gyllenhaal, where Tobey Maguire plays a soldier who was taken as a POW over in, I believe, Iraq, and how it just messed with his mind when he comes home, when he gets saved, and how his brother and Jake Gyllenhaal and his relationship with his brother and his wife, who thought he was dead. And Tobey Maguire, while I'm not a huge fan of him, he gives such a chilling performance in this. It's such a heavy topic. This is not one that if you're looking to laugh, you're going to watch Brothers, but it's a very good movie. The next one is a movie called Can You Ever Forgive Me? It was nominated for an Oscar a couple years ago. Both the one actor in it and Melissa McCarthy were both nominated, but it's a true story about this woman who was a writer, and she just starts plagiarizing. And it's really that simple. She just starts plagiarizing all this stuff. And it's not like she's plagiarizing books. She's plagiarizing letters from famous people and signing it and passing it off as the real thing to sell, because her writing career hasn't gone the way it should, and then obviously she gets caught. But it's a pretty solid flick. Next movie I'll talk about is Casino Royale. It is the new Casino Royale, not the old one, although HBO does have the old Casino Royale that I haven't seen. But I'm a sucker for these new Daniel Craig James Bond movies. It's a James Bond movie. We'll move on to a hidden gem in the comedy realm, Cedar Rapids. Cedar Rapids stars Ed Helms from The Hangover and from the Vacation movie. And basically he plays an insurance salesman who gets sent to an insurance convention in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, and the people he encounters. If you're a fan of The Wire, which I'm going to talk about, there's a little tip of the cap to The Wire in this that is absolutely hysterical, but this movie is a nice hidden gem in the comedy realm that you probably didn't hear of, but is pretty funny. Crazy Stupid Love is another one, is a great movie, a good rom-com if you're in a relationship and you're looking to watch something with the wife or the boyfriend. But it's a good movie where Steve Carell plays a husband who ends up finding out that his wife is leaving him and was having an affair, and he gets Ryan Gosling to start kind of teaching him the way of getting back in the dating pool, all while managing his soon-to-be ex-wife, his family, his daughters, their daughters' relationships. It's really well done. I absolutely love this movie. And fuck David Lindhagen. Next movies, and this is a trio: The Mighty Ducks 1, 2, 3. Harken back to what I said about The Big Green. They're not great movies, but from my childhood, I mean, I have a little kid at home, so I'll put them on, and relive the glory days. I wish my mother told me that the knuckle puck isn't a real thing, so I wouldn't focus on that as much, and maybe I'd be good at hockey, but she didn't. But the movies, the first one is really good, and by really good, I mean for a kid's movie. The second one's the best in my opinion. The third one's not that great, but it's still a Mighty Ducks movie. The Day After Tomorrow is kind of funny because what we're going through. It's not a snowstorm, but some people are acting like it is. It's not an incredible movie, but it's worth watching because it's another one that you can kind of just put on, check your brain at the door. It's an interesting look at what would happen if all of a sudden Mother Nature really got pissed off and just covered entire cities in snow. It's a guilty pleasure for me. Classic Dodgeball. I feel like everyone's seen Dodgeball, but you might want to go back and rewatch it to remember how funny it is. The next movie I'll talk about, as I have to move the paper here, sorry for my arm in the way, is Enemy at the Gate. This is a slow burn film. It's a movie about two snipers trying to play. One of them is played by Jude Law, trying to get each other. And I believe World War I, might be World War II. I have a 50% shot at that. But once again, it's a slow burn, and it's really tense at times and very well done. Next one is Fantastic Beasts and the Crimes of Grindelwald. I thought this movie was better than the first Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. I thought there was more action in this, a darker storyline. I really enjoyed it, and if you saw the first one and you haven't seen the second one, then I suggest going and watching this one. The first one I thought was a little tad bit boring, but this one I thought was really good. The next movie is a complete check your brain at the door. Actually, the next two. Fast 5 and Hobbs and Shaw. What's to say about the Fast and the Furious movies that hasn't already been said? It's over the top. It's cars flying. It's we're here, we're family. Are we talking, are we racing? Hobbs and Shaw, much of the same. I went into Hobbs and Shaw with very little expectations. It was better than I thought, and I know I've done a review of that. So you can go to the 60-second review, the playlist, and you can find that. But both these movies are senseless action movies that are enjoyable. There's not a lot of substance to them, but I think Hobbs and Shaw was actually worth watching for a lot of it. The Favorite is the next. This one was nominated for an Oscar. It actually won Olivia Colman an Oscar. This is done by Yorgos Lanthimos, and he's a very out there director. He did a movie called The Lobster. He did a movie called Killing of a Sacred Deer. This is probably his most normal movie. And what they do is it's set in the Victorian era, but they don't act all upper crusty Victorian like Downton Abbey. They make jerk-off jokes and stuff like that, but it's a look at how a girl goes from being basically a maid to kind of rising in power through manipulating people, and it's very well done, and I loved it. The next movie is Fight Club. I'm not going to talk about Fight Club because it's against the rules. The next movie that we'll talk about is For Love of the Game. This is another movie that if you're craving sports because of the lack of sports, this is one of my favorite baseball movies of all time. It's another good one to watch with maybe a wife or a girlfriend or a husband or a boyfriend because it kind of fits both. But it's an aging pitcher going through a no-hitter while recounting what led him to this moment with his on-again, off-again girlfriend and his career. And it's Kevin Costner, baseball. If he does a baseball movie, I'm going to watch it. And this movie is so, so good. The next movie is Gamer. This is probably the movie I'm going to get the most heat on because this movie could possibly be considered a piece of shit. And I'm putting it on there because it's the definition of a guilty pleasure for me. It is, and all of a sudden I'm forgetting his name, and I'm not going to go back and edit this like every other YouTube guy. But this is, and it's on the tip of my tongue, he was in 300. Somebody is watching this screaming the name. Anyway, the main character, you live in a world, in a futuristic world where soldiers or prisoners are treated as video game characters that are controllable from players. And if you reach 30 wins, you get your freedom. And the main character in this movie, who all of a sudden, it's weird, his name's escaping me, and I can picture him too, which is the most frustrating part. And he's taken some really bad movies, and you might be able to classify this as that. But it is a guilty pleasure of mine. I do like it. And if you're into senseless action movies that try to have a plot but kind of fail at it, Gamer's your movie. And if I remember the guy's name, I will scream it out. I really know that if I took a second and thought about it, I would remember his name. And all that's coming to my brain is Hugh Jackman, and it's obviously not Hugh Jackman. Once again, I know somebody is out there. Gerard Butler. Thank you. Gerard Butler's the star of that. Glass. If you've seen Unbreakable, if you've seen Split, this is the third one. This is the climax of the movie. I liked it. I know why people don't like it. I understand why if you weren't a fan of it, I completely get it. But I enjoyed it. And I think if you watch the first two, you owe it to yourself to finish it out. And I really enjoyed it. The next one is Grandma's Boy. This is another one of those comedies that might have flew under the radar, but if you're 30, this is one of those classic films that is right up there. I think it's made by Billy Madison's production company, Happy Madison, and it fits his realm of Billy Madison and Happy Gilmore and all those, like, what's the plot of this movie? But I keep finding myself cracking up and laughing about it. Basically, it's a video game designer. That's it. He's designing video games. He's living in his grandmom's house. It's hysterical. So, Grosse Pointe Blank is next. This is John Cusack, 90s movie where he plays a hitman who has to go back to his hometown while also going to his high school reunion while he's also getting hunted. He's also trying to avoid getting shot. It's good. It's not amazing. I wouldn't put this as like, man, you need to really hop on HBO now and watch it. I think it's worth watching. I think the soundtrack's really good in it, but I wouldn't watch a movie just for the soundtrack. But it's worth checking out. It wasn't terrible. The Island is another guilty pleasure. This movie is, all of a sudden I'm drawing a blank on everyone's name. And I mentioned them earlier too. But basically the main premise of this is you have people on an island, or they think they're on an island at least. They've been told that the outside world is uninhabitable. They're living in this facility, and they're told that there's a lottery, and you can win a chance to go to the island. And the two of the main characters realize that the island is non-existent, and what they are is clones. And when you win a chance to go to the island, you're actually being murdered and harvested for your organs because some rich guy paid to be cloned so that if he ever got sick, he'd have a heart, a lung. And they escape and they try to make it into civilization. I apologize. Scarlett Johansson's the one person, and for Ewan McGregor is the other one. And I liked it. It's a good science fiction flick. Not amazing. I'm sure the critics didn't really like it, but I thought it was a pretty good movie. It's kind of a funny story. Is another one. This is the first movie that I remember seeing. And I'm truly drawing a blank on everyone. Zach Galifianakis, that was it. Zach Galifianakis. I don't want to sit here and have a video of me just trying to think of people's names, but this is the first movie I saw Zach Galifianakis really be a serious character, and it's two teens. One of them is Emma Roberts, and they're in a psychiatric ward trying to just get through life and the problems. But it's not really. It's a comedy in a way. It's not an action film. It's more of a drama. It's certainly not an action film, but it was good. It's worth watching. The next one is Jobs. This movie got a lot of heat, and Ashton Kutcher took the brunt of it. I like this movie because it's based on a true story. I thought it was better than the Steve Jobs movie. The Steve Jobs movie only focused on a little portion of his life. This movie focuses on the entirety of it. And while I don't know if Ashton Kutcher is good in it, I think it's a good movie that shows how much of an asshole Steve Jobs is. So I enjoyed it. I liked it. I didn't think it was nearly as bad as everyone made out to be. And if you're into Apple products and you're into biopics, I think this is a decent look. The next one, John Wick 3. I did a 60-second review for this. It was one of my favorite movies of the year. I'm a sucker for the John Wick movies. I think they keep getting better. This is no different. If you watch 1, if you watch 2, you need to watch 3. So good. Man of the House. This is a 1990s movie with Jonathan Taylor Thomas and Chevy Chase. And it's a kids movie, okay? If you have 10-year-olds at home, maybe this is a good movie for them. I loved it when I was a kid. So Chevy Chase plays Jonathan Taylor Thomas's his new stepdad, if you will. I think he's just dating his mom, but he wants to get more involved in Jonathan Taylor Thomas's life, and JTT has no interest in that whatsoever. So he figures, all right, I'll flush him out by joining this fake Indian tribe, kind of like the Boy Scouts, this group, and he won't want to do it, and he'll start leaving me alone. And then he ends up really liking it, and the two end up bonding. But Chevy Chase, because he's the lawyer, he gets tracked down by these mob people. I think it's a good movie to show kids if they're looking to see something older that maybe necessarily you didn't watch because you were too old for it, but I think you'll both get some enjoyment out of it, the kid and the adult. So, Men of Our. I'm sorry, I can't read my own handwriting. Men of Honor. It's Men of Honor. I'm sorry. I couldn't think of it, and I can't read my handwriting, and I knew it didn't sound right, so I had to stop the tape. Men of Honor. It's the true story of the first African-American diver in Navy history, what he had to go through. Cuba Gooding Jr. is so good in this movie. Very powerful performance. Really good. I love this movie when it came out, and it's definitely worth checking out. If you're into biopics, this is a really good one. The next movie I'll talk about is one of my favorite movies the year it came out, Midnight Special. This is done by the same director who did a movie called Loving, and that was a normal flick. But another weird movies are a movie called Take Shelter and a movie called Mud, and this is by far his weirdest movie, Midnight Special. It follows this kid who gets kidnapped, but he has a special ability, and the FBI is trying to figure out where this kid is, because this kid and what he's said in the past is really leading a cult to believe that he's talking from the Word of God, and they need to get somewhere by a certain date, and you find out why and all this thing. It's really good. It's a little-known movie that flew under the radar, but I can't suggest Midnight Special enough. Loved it. Quantum of Solace is another one that's just a Bond movie, so if you like James Bond movies, you're going to like it. Paterno is the true story of Joe Paterno. Once again, biopic. I couldn't stand Joe Paterno, but very, very good movie. Detective Pikachu. This is a movie that if you used to like Pokemon back in the day, I think you will like this movie because it's not just a Pokemon movie. I did a 6-second review for this, so if you want to check that out, you can just go to the YouTube channel and just go to playlists and the 6-second review. It's one of the first ones I did. But it was better than I thought. Ryan Reynolds plays a very funny Pikachu. I mean, it had heart, it had soul to it. It was worth watching. The Recruit is the next movie that I'll talk about. This movie had Al Pacino in it, and it had Colin Farrell in it. And Colin Farrell plays a recruit for the CIA, and Al Pacino plays his mentor, if you will, but all the things that Colin Farrell had to go through, but then there's some shady stuff going on. This is a movie that is a late 90s, maybe early 2000s movie that doesn't really get mentioned a lot, and I thought it was really good. It's worth watching. If you've never seen it before, thoroughly suggest it. Ricochet is a Denzel movie from the 90s where Denzel plays a cop who's getting hunted by a guy that he's pretty confident he killed years ago. And the guy who he's pretty confident he killed is played by John Lithgow, who plays a tremendous villain in this. Not used to seeing John Lithgow like that, but he's very creepy good in this movie. But it's a Denzel movie. You can't really go wrong with Denzel. And if you've never seen it, I suggest it. All right, The Ringer is the next one. Now, this movie got a lot of heat when it came out because people thought it was mocking people with special needs, but I think it did the opposite of that. I think it highlighted all the things that they're able to do. Johnny Knoxville plays a normal person who ends up joining the Special Olympics and faking it to join to win the Special Olympics so that a gambling debt is paid and they can bet on the Special Olympics. But it's pretty funny, I must admit. It's worth checking out if you've never seen it. Rise of Planet of the Apes. This is one of the new movies from the new Planet of the Apes series, which I don't think we needed, but when we got, I was pleasantly surprised with it. Thought it was really good. I thought the first one was really good. Second one was the best, and the third one was a little disappointing, but still good. Rush. Rush is another movie that the year it came out, I think it came out in 2015. This is one of my most favorite movie, number one movie that year. This is the true story of James Hunt and Niki Lauda and their Formula One, the rivalry back in the 70s. You don't have to be a fan of racing movies to enjoy this movie. It is a sports movie, so there is the competitive angle, but it's done by Ron Howard, and it is so damn good. I love this movie. There are a few movies where I'm saying, right now, watch this first. Rush is one of those. Shazam is a DC superhero movie that's actually good. I know. No, it can't be. Yes, Shazam was good. And it's set in Philadelphia, so shout out to that. Now, it's set in Philadelphia. It wasn't filmed in Philadelphia, but it was pleasantly surprising. It was good. I enjoyed it. Next movie, A Star is Born. Bradley Cooper, Gaga, loved it. Saw it 3 times in theaters. It's the story of a star being born. That's it. Star getting found, star becoming a star, addiction, runs the gamut. Not a comedy. This is a serious movie. It might even, hit the old feels, but it's really good. 13 Days is the true story of the Cuban Missile Crisis. If you are a skew younger and you're unaware of how close we were to World War III, watch 13 Days, see JFK and Bobby Kennedy and a lot of other people that I forget really save the country in a time of severe crisis when the Soviets put ballistic missiles and nukes and all that good stuff in Cuba, which is obviously 90 miles away from America, and how they were able to work around that and keep the peace, if you will. But really, really, really good biopic. The Town is tremendous. It is, Ben Affleck gets a lot of shit, and I don't necessarily know why. I think it's just he was the butt of jokes for so long that people just keep rolling with it. But he directed The Town. It's so good. It's a really good look at the grittiness of Boston, and the storyline's really good. He's good in it. I love The Town. I ended up buying it. It was so good. So if you haven't seen The Town because you're a hater of Ben Affleck, just throw it to the side. Watch the movie. You will be pleasantly surprised. Unbreakable. We talked about the movie Glass earlier. Unbreakable is the first one in that franchise. I did not see Split on HBO, which is weird because of the fact that it's the second movie. But Unbreakable, it's good. It's long and it's drawn out and it's slow at times, but it's a very unique superhero movie. The next one is United 93. This is a movie that I saw once and I don't really need to see again, but if you've never seen it, I think it is important to watch. It's all about the brave men and women on Flight United 93 who took down the terrorists, and unfortunately they lost their lives, but they saved a lot of lives too. And it's such a well done movie, but it is just so heavy and powerful that I really only suggest watching it if you've never watched it before. Us was my number one movie of the year for this past year. If you watched that video of my top movies of 2019, I appreciate it. You know that Us is number one for me. Jordan Peele did such a good job with Get Out. Us took the next step. It's really good. Usual Suspects is a classic from the 90s. It follows this police detective trying to figure out where this, I believe it's a drug raid gone wrong and what happened. There's only one survivor, and it's played by Kevin Spacey. And it's got such an amazing ending, cast, script, everything about this movie was so good, right down to Kaiser Soze. Next movie is Valkyrie, another true story, and it stars Tom Cruise. The craziest part about this movie is if you go look at Tom Cruise and the character that he was playing, the real life guy, they are identical. It's scary. But this movie is about a Nazi soldier who tried to assassinate Adolf Hitler back in World War II, and it was called Operation Valkyrie. He was unsuccessful, obviously, but it was a very good World War II movie that not really a lot of people mention in terms of World War II movies, but it was very good. Unfortunately, he was unsuccessful in it. Would have been cool if he was successful, but it's still a very good movie. The Wizard. I'm a sucker for this movie. All right, you got Fred Savage trying to win a video game competition in the late 90s. Late 80s, early 90s. And of course, you got the Nintendo Power Glove, which it was a piece of shit, and everyone that used it knows it, but it was in there, and it's a good throwback. The next movie is The Wizard of Lies, and this is the true story, and this is another one that made my list of top movies the year I saw it. Unfortunately, I wasn't doing a YouTube channel at the time, but this is the true story of Bernie Madoff and all that he had to go through, his investors had to go through, and maybe more importantly, his family had to go through. And it is so good. Robert De Niro in this shines. He is crazy good in this role. And last movie on HBO that I recommend is the movie Yesterday. What would happen if all of a sudden no one remembered the Beatles but you, and you're a singer-songwriter? I did a 60-second review for this movie. If you get a chance, go check that out, watch it. But very good. I loved it. And I'm not even a Beatles fan, and I love this. So for documentaries, and I haven't watched a lot of the documentaries on HBO, but the ones that I watched I did like. So the ones that I watched, Andre the Giant was very good. It wasn't as good as I thought it was going to be. I thought it was going to be better, but it is a good look into Andre the Giant, the wrestler. Beware of Slender Man is a really good look into what your kids are watching on YouTube. You're watching me. You don't know what they're watching. Slender Man, if you're unaware, was this urban legend type guy, but also how unhinged some kids became because of this urban legend known as Slender Man, and it was scary at times. The fact that kids are so gullible that they'll believe this stuff and how far they go. It was I wouldn't watch it with the kids in the room, that's for sure. Hoop Dreams was a good look into, and this is an old movie. This is back in I think the early 90s. This was filmed, but going from 8th grade to graduating high school, following these two basketball stars in Chicago and their basketball careers. And one transfers a bunch, the other stays in the same school, where they end up going to college. They're different paths, but it's an interesting look into the dream of becoming an NBA player. It's long, and I'll tell you that right now. It is long, but if you're a sports fan, I think you'll like it. The next one is, and this is a very serious documentary, Heroin Cape Cod. I put it on the list because it's so well done. It's a very good look into the heroin epidemic, but man, it's heavy. I mean, after this, you're going to want to go watch one of the comedies I talked about earlier because it's such a heavy, heavy topic, but it's also an important look into the opioid crisis. The Inventor, the con of Silicon Valley. This was an interesting documentary. It was a little long, but it followed around this girl who was kind of conning people into thinking that she was going to come up with this box that had all of these different tests available at once. So you would have, you would just prick your finger and you would have an AIDS test, but also a coronavirus test and a flu test and all of this stuff. And it didn't work. And people kept giving her money and believing her, and it was the Silicon Valley dream of, oh yeah, here's a bunch of money, and no one's questioning how's this going to work and how she kind of conned people into just funneling her money when eventually it became obvious this thing's never going to hit the light of day. The next documentary, which I love and I've watched a few times, Momentum Generation, follows around surfers, one of them being Kelly Slater, who's the most famous surfer, and how they grew from being teenage friends to being professional friends to being professional rivals and then regaining their friendship. You don't need to like surfing to like this documentary. I don't like surfing. Nothing against it. I can't. I'm not a good swimmer and it's not my sport. But it was so well done that really out of all of these documentaries, this is probably my favorite one, Momentum Generation. So good. The next one, and it's another very good sports documentary, The Runnin' Rebels of UNLV follows the Jerry Tarkanian Runnin' Rebels teams, which were, they were dirty, but he got them to win, and they had some characters in that team, and it's a good look into how Jerry Tarkanian, I don't want to say he turned around the program because, he turned around the program with money, but they don't really cover that because he was in it, but it's a good look into UNLV. And then finally, State of Play. This is a documentary that really just focuses on trophy parents. And you know the ones who are sitting in the gym yelling, "You're shooting short, Derek! You're shooting short! Let's go! He made a bad call!" And it's the parent, you going, "Oh my God, please tell me I'm not like this guy." That's this documentary. It follows 3 different parents who are overbearing on their kids, who don't even realize how overbearing they are. They think they're fine. Okay. In the sports category of HBO, and there's only 3 that I'll talk about. 7 Days in Hell was hilarious. Andy Samberg, the guy who played Jon Snow, who all of a sudden I forget his name. The guy who played Jon Snow, which is what he's known for, Kit Harington. And they play, it goes into a mockumentary, think of Bjorg McEnroe, that is hysterical. And if you haven't seen it and you're looking for a good laugh, 7 Days in Hell is it. Real Sports with Brian Gumbel. If you need a sports fix, they have episodes dating back a couple years, I think. So go check out Real Sports if you've never done it. Don't be like me. I didn't watch Real Sports for years because I didn't like Brian Gumbel, and then finally I got suckered into watching it, and I love it. I look forward to this show every single month. Some of the stories are amazing, some of the stories aren't, but it'll give you that sports fix. And finally, and I'm sure if you're a sports fan, you have watched this, but Hard Knocks, it's good. And lastly, we go with the series. Arliss is an old HBO series that followed around a sports agent named Arliss. And I liked it. It's good. I'm a sports fan, so there's that. The next series I'll talk about is Ballers. Is Ballers a good series? No, it's horrible. but it's a half hour. It's about sports, and it features The Rock, and you could breeze through it. So this is one I'll put on the list and say, if you're desperate, go watch Ballers. But it shouldn't be your first choice. The next one is Barry. Barry, on the other hand, is a phenomenal choice to kick off, because if you haven't checked out Barry, Bill Hader is so good in this show, and it's hilarious. It's and I probably should get into what it's about. A hitman who goes to kill somebody but walks into an acting class and decides, I would like to be an actor, and wants to quit being a hitman and become an actor. The best part is, he's a horrible actor. I mean, he's terrible. But Henry Winkler plays his acting coach, and this show is, I can't stress it enough. Go watch it. I think they're 3 seasons in. Might be 2 seasons in. But half hour, same thing. You'll be able to breeze through it. The next one is Avenue 5. I use this with an asterisk because I've watched 4 episodes of it, and while I think it's good, it's definitely missing something. It's like the characters are good, but like it's missing that one thing, and I haven't finished it, but I'll use the caveat of an asterisk. Chernobyl. If you haven't watched Chernobyl, holy shit. Incredible. Absolutely incredible look at not only what happened at Chernobyl with the power plant exploding, but the sheer negligence of the government to do the, burning building. This is fine. The case against Anand Syed, if you have not listened to the Serial podcast or Undisclosed, the case against Anand Syed is a good mini-series that's about, I think, 4 or 5 episodes that looks into a pretty messed up case of a murder of a guy in Baltimore, and the evidence is you make up your own mind, but it's a good look into that. The Dane Cook. Dane Cook's Tourgasm. Hear me out on this. I know, Dane Cook, he is what he is. But the Tourgasm, the series, followed around Dane Cook and a couple of other comedians, one of them being Gary Goldman, and them just going from tour to tour to tour. I don't find Dane Cook all that funny, but I found the other comedians funny. And because of that, that's where I'm suggesting this really mini-series, if you will. Because while I think he was the least funny part of it, the other comedians were hilarious in it. And speaking of comedians, we'll go to the show Crashing. It had, I think, 3 or 4 seasons, and they're over. It's done. But it was good, and it followed around a struggling comedian named Pete Holmes and his struggle to become a top-level comedian in New York City. He's the least funny part of the show, but the show is very good, and it's only half hour, and you can probably breeze through it. And everybody else is hilarious because they're all real comedians. The next one I'll talk about is The Defiant Ones. This is a documentary, a 4-part docuseries on a music producer named Jimmy Iovine and a little guy that you might have heard of named Dr. Dre, and how their relationship going from, it starts out with Dr. Dre, next episode Jimmy Iovine, the next episode is melding the two together. It is so well done. I've watched this one a couple times, and it's a good look into the business practices of both men and their careers, and how they really started from nothing and built themselves up into icons in the industry. The next one is Entourage. I rewatched Entourage about 2 months ago. I love this series. I'm a sucker for it. It's a little bit dated, but I love it. It's 4 guys from Queens. They're friends. Eastbound and Down. It's funny. I like it. It just, to me, it was always missing something. And some episodes were hysterical, laugh out loud, and other episodes I just found myself just sitting there, kind of like, all right, this is over the top. But it's worth checking out if you're a sports fan. And there are some episodes where Danny McBride just is hysterical in the role of basically John Rocker. The next one is another mini-series. It's called The Jinx, and this is one, if you're in a true crime series, The Jinx is the one that you're going to want to check out. It follows around Robert Durst, who he killed his wife. I mean, let's call it what it is. Guy killed his wife. But it's such an interesting look into trying to catch him being interviewed. He's a rich guy. They made a movie about him. If you're a fan of true crime and have not checked out The Jinx, yes, that's the one that you're going to want to gravitate towards immediately. The next one is a show called Game of Thrones. Little show, fantasy-based. So if you like Game of Thrones, if you like Lord of the Rings, you might like Game of Thrones. It's not a lot of people talk about it, but it was pretty good. Mosaic was a short miniseries that was about this murder of a writer. At the time, everybody was losing their minds over Big Little Lies. I hated Big Little Lies. That's why I don't put it on the list. I thought Mosaic was everything Big Little Lies should have been. Big Little Lies was annoying to me, and Mosaic was so good. Another one of the true crime ish. I mean, it's not a true story, but it's very well done. The next one I'll talk about is McMillions. This is a documentary that just actually wrapped up on HBO about the McDonald's monopoly fraud that was going on, of this guy just giving out the winning game pieces, but it's much deeper than that. It's a 5-part series, and thoroughly suggested if you're into what I like to call stupid documentaries, one that aren't like on heavy topics, but this one I think is interesting because everyone's played the McDonald's Monopoly game. The next one is The Newsroom. The Newsroom was one of the best shows on HBO, in my opinion. It was so good. Jeff Daniels was tremendous in it. If you check this, it's basically about a newsroom. It's about, CNN, but it's really about Jeff Daniels' character wanting to focus more on serious news stories and not the older stuff and the played out stuff, but really get to the crux of the issues in the country. Very well done. I love it. Then the next one's The Night Of. This is a good one that was very popular when it came out. It focuses on a murder and a guy who is wrongly convicted, we think, of this murder. But it's an interesting look into how one night changed all of these people's lives, whether it be for the good or the bad. Just one night, that night of, changed a lot of people's lives because of one thing that happened. And then finally, Won't You Be My Neighbor is, I don't know why I put this in series, because it should be in movies or documentaries. It should be in docs. Won't You Be My Neighbor is the documentary on Mr. Rogers. It was emotional as hell. It will have you choking up, and it will have you missing the golden age of just having a guy like Mr. Rogers there to really make life that is dark and shine some light and shine some positivity on it. So that's everything that is on HBO that I think you should check out. Once again, if you could please subscribe to the channel, I would really, really appreciate it. I will put more out for Hulu, Amazon, Showtime, Stars maybe, all that good stuff, since we're all hunkered down together. And obviously, remember to please wash your damn hands. And then like the video and subscribe. Do that before you wash your hands. That's the most important thing. So like and subscribe, and then wash your hands.